I'm Kent Justice, your host for This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. Now, if you're watching on one of our platforms, you're going to notice that we didn't have very good Wi-Fi coverage during this week's episode. The video pretty shaky at times, but don't let it be a distraction. The conversation is so good. I want you to listen to how much growth is happening in the state and how many jobs are out there for the taking. Here's my visit with Mark Wilson, the president of the Florida Chamber of Commerce and Florida Chamber Foundation. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. This is really cool today. We're doing our interview with Mark Wilson, who is the president of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And Mark, I reached out because I saw this new report that came out. It was the Florida Workforce Needs Study 2.0. So why don't we just start here? I know you've had like 25 years with the Chamber. A majority of that is president for the Florida Chamber there, but just tell us about the Chamber of Commerce, and then we'll get specific about this workforce study.
Yeah, Kent, thanks so much for reaching out. And this is one of the important studies that we've done because it's something everyone is impacted by. And it talks about jobs and workforce training and what that looks like today and what it look like down the road. And of course, the Florida Chamber is very focused on how do we make Florida the national example of quality of life? How do we have the #1 workforce and education system in the country? And how do we show the country how to grow small and mid-sized businesses so that everyone can pursue the job and career opportunity that they would want right here in Florida? So that's a little bit about what we're doing. In terms of the report itself, things don't just happen on their own. We have to research them. We have to look at what are other countries doing? What are other states doing? And, it wasn't too long ago that Florida was known as a place for tourism and agriculture and construction. And it wasn't too long ago that our education system wasn't that great. And fast forward to 2024, and, Florida is known as one of the best places in the world for healthcare, for modeling and simulation. We're #1 in the world for aerospace, for example. And we now have the #1 rated college and university system in the United States for 8 years in a row and top 10 K-12 system. So anytime we make those kind of changes over a 20-year period of time, it makes sense to research now what? So where do we go next, and how do we create not just great jobs, but how do we make people aware of them, and how do we get them trained for them? Kent, it used to be that people thought they had to leave Florida for great jobs. The reality of it is people are now coming to Florida because of the great jobs we have here, and that's what this report's about.
So I can relate to part of that. I came to Florida in 2010 for a job, and certainly I've been aware in these almost 14 years of the growth that has happened in the state. But this really caught me. It's not just that Florida is a leader among the United States in terms of economy. I'm reading in this part of this report that Florida's economy is the 10th largest in the world. And that obviously means there's been growth happening and still growth to come. And that means you need more in the workforce, right?
Yeah, so Kent, let me speak to that. So what we actually have is, if Florida was its own economy, if you look at our GDP of about 1.62 trillion, we currently actually would be about the 15th largest economy on the planet, which is about the size of Mexico. We're bigger than Saudi Arabia, just to put it in perspective. But where you got the number 10 from is, you're absolutely right. Our goal is by 2030, how can we grow our economy and create jobs and educational opportunities? How can we grow to the 10th largest economy on the planet by 2030, which, by the way, is Italy today? And a couple of thoughts around that, Kent. We have 23 million people in Florida right now, give or take. And our economists and demographers at the Florida Chamber Foundation tell us we're going to add another 2.8 million new residents by 2030. All 67 counties are going to grow. Florida is going to grow by 2.8 million, as I mentioned. And just Duval, one of the counties in your area, is going to add about 200,000 more people just between now and 2030. And if you think about what does that mean to the workforce, what does that mean to jobs? Well, statewide, we need about 1.4 million new jobs by 2030. But just right there in the Jacksonville area, you need about 80,000 new jobs created by 2030. So the more we can do to help middle schoolers and high schoolers and parents and guidance counselors and grandparents and employers understand what are those opportunities going to be? And by the way, do you need a 4-year degree for them? Do you need a 2-year degree? What about stacking credentials and badges? The world's changed out there. It's not just about getting a degree anymore and there'll be a job for you. Things are changing. And that's a bit about what we're trying to highlight.
Well, part of what I was looking at there, one of the things that stood out to me is not just the number of jobs that will need to be created, but the kinds. And we've seen that here in Northeast Florida with the different the universities, the colleges here, saying, "Hey, we want to work closely with businesses so that our graduates are delivering the kind of skills for the workforce that our employers need." That seems like that's a pretty big component of what the state needs to do.
It is, Kent, and it really if you stop and think about it, it's pretty simple, but we're all going fast. We don't really stop and think about it. So we have to, as I mentioned, we have to create 1.4 million new jobs in the state, but the 80 or so thousand jobs you need to create in Northeast Florida, we actually just put out a report, and I can send it to you today, and you can post it if you're interested. We have a pretty good indication through our research of what the top 30 in-demand careers will be in Northeast Florida by 2030. And so the key point here isn't just what are those careers, but what's my pathway? Some of them require just a high school diploma. Some of them require a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, or an industry certification. And one of the things we're really trying to highlight with our report is the importance and the value of skilled trades. So think about nursing, think about auto mechanics, think about people who repair our air conditioners and our elevators, diesel mechanics, and so forth. We call these skilled trades. There are so many people that fix our trucks and fix us as nurses that after a few years are in the 6-figure category. And these don't all require 4-year degrees. In fact, 9 of the top 30 in-demand careers in the Jacksonville market between now and 2030 are in these skilled trade areas. Things like electrician and construction trades, automotive service, diesel mechanics. I mentioned construction, plumbing, nursing, heating and air conditioning. And I have to tell you, Kent, at the risk of maybe getting a little more detailed than you wanted today, our country has really told everyone that to be successful, the only way to do that is a 4-year degree. And when we look at countries like Germany that we compete against, if a 16-year-old girl comes home and says, "Hey, mom and dad, I've decided what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a diesel mechanic," they hug her and high five her and say, "That is such an awesome career, honey." Just like we do in America, if you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor. And the reality of it is, America needs skilled trades. And this workforce study 2.0 that we've done highlights what will in-demand careers be and what are the skill sets that people are going to need as they look at staying right here in Florida and part of our economy. So I hope that adds a little color and flavor to your question.
Absolutely. Mark Wilson, president of the Florida Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Chamber Foundation. So as we continue talking here, that's a sizable number of jobs that need to be created across the state. And as you pointed out, in Duval County, and obviously, St. Johns County is one of the fastest growing places around. What are some of the ways to maybe shift that conversation? Because I think that is something that maybe needs to change. It's not, you can only be successful if you have a college degree, but certainly it's harder to be
Right.
successful if you don't have a target and you don't know what the path is in order to achieve what your goal is.
Right. Yeah, Kent, I'm so glad you asked that question. I think it's really where the gold is for viewers and for listeners. And I think, first of all, if you don't know what types of jobs are going to be available, and by the way, you might be transitioning out of the military or you might be looking for a second career. We're not only talking about high schoolers and people coming out of maybe college or university. We're talking about how do we get the word out about these cool jobs that exist in Northeast Florida. So, Kent, the first thing we would want to do is say, can you imagine if the county commission and the school board and local chambers of commerce and credible news organizations and middle schoolers and high schoolers, can you imagine if every month we made it a priority to educate citizens on what the cool career opportunities are right here in the region? So middle schoolers can start thinking about, wait a second, what is welding? What is mechatronics? What's this nursing thing? And you mean I don't have to leave Jacksonville to find a really awesome career? I can do that right here. So as silly as that sounds and as simple as that sounds, the number one thing we can do is start talking to each other about what the in-demand careers are going to be, and then having an honest conversation about, well, what's the pathway? How do I get there? What are the skills that I need if I want to be a diesel mechanic and make $95,000 a year in the Jacksonville area, for example? So that's one thing. Second thing we need to be honest about is we have something in Florida, in America, but in Florida called disconnected youth. And in the category of 16 to 24, just to put perspective on this, we have about 267,000 people in Florida, 16 to 24, that are neither in school or working. And we need these people in the workforce. We need them to, be in the training force, and we need them to be in the workforce. And Kent, we also have 2 million adults in Florida without a GED. And the older you get, once you get past 30, 35, 40, if you didn't graduate high school, society begins to tell you that it's too late. And the reality of it is, with technical schools and with state colleges now, it's never too late. And so, if you have a viewer that's 46, 47, 58 years old who said, I thought about being a mechanic for airplanes or diesel, or I might want to be a nurse, you're very much needed in the workforce right now. And so, Kent, the last thing I would say about this is I think the numbers and scale matter here, right? Remember I said we need to, in the Jacksonville area alone, you need to create about 80,000 jobs by 2030. Well, what's important to note here is in Florida today, for every 100 open jobs, there's only 91 people looking for work. That's in Florida. But in the Northeast Florida area where you are, for every 100 open jobs, there's only 62 people looking for a job. So if you're an employer today and you have open positions, you don't have a line of people. It used to be there were more people applying and you could pick the best of the talent. So this is a necessity now for Florida, Kent. What we have to do is we have to raise awareness about the types of jobs that are going to be available in Florida, and in this case, Northeast Florida. And we need to get serious about talking to our sons and daughters and our brothers and sisters and parents and grandparents and guidance counselors about, hey, what are those cool careers and how do I go about pursuing them if I want to stay right here in Florida? So that's a lot to unpack, but this is a lot about what our research was about.
Yeah. And Mark, I don't get the notion that you're a pessimist at all, but what if those jobs don't get filled? What if the workforce doesn't expand and keep up with the need that employers have to try and fill those openings?
Yeah, so Kent, there's two real world things we're seeing right now. So the question is, what if these jobs don't get filled, right? So all of us are experiencing, when we go out to eat, we're experiencing how long it might take for us to be served. Or if you want your air conditioner serviced and they say, oh, sure, we can be there in 3 months.
Yeah.
Or you want to make an appointment to see your doctor or with the nurse and they say, no problem, 6 months from now, we can get you in. So we're already feeling what's happening when we don't have enough people in a service economy that are working. The second thing that happens, Kent, is over the course of time, companies are going to relocate where the talent is. And as I say in our report, that with a focus on economic development, jobs, talent is replacing the incentive as the most important attractant for companies to relocate. So if we don't answer the call, if we don't provide industry, whether it's fintech, whether it's modeling and simulation, manufacturing, healthcare, if we don't provide industry with the talent that they need, then those companies will go where the talent is. And Kent, I feel compelled to tell you, when I was in third grade, fifth grade, eighth grade, not all that long ago, right? I would look around and I was going to grow up and I was going to compete with the people that were in my class. So you had to look around and say, hey, if I have to compete with her or compete with him, how are we going to do? Well, today's third graders and eighth graders, they're not competing with each other. They're competing with kids in China and Brazil and Mexico and Germany. And so we have to understand that jobs can be anywhere in the world. They don't have to be in Jacksonville. So we need our city councils, our county commission, our state legislature to understand that we got to do everything we can to advantage Florida. But what this report says is we need to do everything we can to educate people about the training that's available and the really cool in-demand careers that are out there. So that's what this is all about.
Yeah. There is a lot of opportunity. There are a lot of benefits, as those of us who live in Florida already know. There are a lot of great things about living and working here in the Sunshine State. Mark Wilson, president of the Florida Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Chamber Foundation. Our first chance to visit. I guarantee not the last time. This has been great. I appreciate you sharing some of those insights. And certainly something we'll want to follow up on. For everybody who's been watching and listening, thanks so much for joining us for This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition.